I'll Be Seeing You Part 1 is the 21st and penultimate episode of the second season of Cheers, directed by the wonderful James Burrows. And to be perfectly honest, I don't really care for this episode. It's not that I dislike it, it's not that I don't enjoy watching it, but for me, it's not the usual quality of a Cheers episode. We have a great guest appearance, which I'll get to in a moment, but I honestly feel like it's not very funny. There's not even a lot of light comic relief, and the tension between Sam and Diane just feels repetitive at this point. And I'll be honest, and I don't necessarily like that I have to say this, but I'm not the biggest fan of Sam and Diane as a couple. Because when they're sweet, they're sickly sweet, and when they're fighting, it's just a bit repetitive. So, honestly, as much as I love Cheers and worship it and kiss the ground it exists on, I'm not the biggest fan of stories that revolve around the tensions between Sam and Diane. And when we have not a lot of comedy to fill things out in this one, even the opening wasn't very funny. So for me personally, not my favourite episode. The opening starts off with Coach asking people to sign up for different things for the Cheers picnic. Nobody's giving him any attention, and I just felt sorry for him. I didn't find it to be very funny. And then the main narrative kicks in, and there will be spoilers from now, but I won't spoil the second part. Part 2 is, of course, the final episode in the season, but I won't discuss anything that happens after this episode, but there will be spoilers for this episode. And the narrative revolves around the fact that Sam has done an interview about eligible bachelors, and he has not mentioned Diane at all. And Diane is understandably not very happy that he's referring to himself as an eligible bachelor. And unusually, I can completely understand Diane's reaction. I don't think she was over the top with this one. And Sam decides to cushion things a little bit and hire an artist to paint a portrait of Diane. And Cliff puts him in touch with somebody called Phillip Semenko, played by Christopher Lloyd. And now we have a pretty awesome guest appearance. Well, I say it's an awesome guest appearance. Christopher Lloyd in this is great. But Semenko as a character, I hated. I thought he was annoying and a little bit creepy, and I didn't really enjoy any of his scenes. The only bit I did like is when he meets Diane and he basically follows Diane around and he's inches away from her. And I thought that was quite interesting because Diane responds in a way that I feel is very unlike Diane because she's very cold and distant and a little bit disturbed by his behaviour, and that's not Diane at all. And I think that it helped to show that Diane was in a very different headspace at that time, and I think it worked very well. Of course, when she realises that this is Semenko, an artist whose work she's familiar with, she flips that around completely, showing that she's not completely different to who she normally is. And Sam doesn't want her to be painted by Semenko, and Diane wants it. Will she do it? Will she do something that she knows will upset Sam? Is she within her right to, given what Sam has done to her? And it's just intense, but not in a way that's gripping and compelling. It's just uncomfortable. And I didn't really like it. I don't like Semenko as a character. I don't like Sam's behaviour in this. Diane, actually, I don't think was unreasonable at all. Although she did come back into Cheers, put on an apron. As I said, these are big spoilers. She comes into Cheers, puts on an apron, asks, I think, one customer what they want, and then within 5 minutes she's left again. So not the most reliable employee, but other than that, I thought her behaviour was actually very reasonable. Sam's not so much. And as I said, there's not a lot of comedy in this. There's not a lot of light comic relief between the more tense moments, and I don't like this episode. As I said, I don't hate it. It's not unwatchable, but there's nothing really about it that I think worked very well. So for me, it's not that interesting. I don't think it should be a two-parter, but obviously we're going for a suspenseful ending, and it's unclear at this stage how season 2 will end, where Diane and Sam will be in their relationship. Honestly, based on this episode, it doesn't make me excited about the final episode. I know, of course, what happens in the next episode, but had this been the first time I was watching it, I wouldn't want to just rush into the next or the last episode, and I feel like that's what I'm meant to feel. So for me, it's not that interesting, it's not that funny. And it's not even one of those episodes where, occasionally an episode can have not a lot of comedy as long as the narrative is moving or emotional or sentimental. But for me, it's just, I didn't feel very much. Other than being slightly creeped out by Semenko, I just didn't have any feelings. None at all with this episode. Needless to say, it's not a favourite. It is nice that every now and then I can review a Cheers episode and not just gush for the entire time, because normally I am personally quite sickly sweet about Cheers, and I will admit that. I'm very, very positive about Cheers. So it's nice, I guess, every now and then to just prove that I can, judge an episode without, just thinking that everything's covered in roses. And unfortunately, that does happen every now and then, but I guess one episode every season or so is not too bad. And I'll be seeing you part one is definitely for me one of those episodes.